This episode is brought to you by Heyday. Looking to escape all the festive chaos? Turn holiday hecticness into harmony with Heyday, the mobile game that helps you harvest calm, one crop at a time. Reclaim your me time. Relax, decorate, and enjoy farming bliss as you tend to your animals and harvest crops as part of a welcoming, stress-free community. Join over 20 million players. Just tap or click on the banner now to download Heyday for free today.
Welcome to No One Told Us, the podcast that tells the truth about parenting and talks about all the stuff you wish you knew before having kids. I'm your host, Rachael, and today I'm speaking with Dr. Elisa Song, who is a Stanford, NYU, and UCSF-trained integrative pediatrician, pediatric functional medicine expert, and mom to 2 thriving teenagers. She's also the author of the national bestseller, Healthy Kids, Happy Kids, An Integrative Pediatrician's Guide to Whole Child Resilience. In her integrative pediatric practice, she's helped thousands of kids get to the root cause of their health concerns, and she empowers parents to help their children thrive by integrating conventional pediatrics with functional medicine, homeopathy, acupuncture, herbal medicine, and more. And I'm so excited to chat today. I have been loving your book. This is something that I talk about with parents all the time, but I really try to stay in my own lane, so I try to refer out to amazing practitioners like you, but parents have a lot of questions about their kids' health and the functional side of things. So I'm hoping that this conversation will shed some light on some things that lots of parents are dealing with today. So thank you so much for joining.
Oh, you're so welcome. And I'm so honored to be here because it is true. I mean, even for me as a pediatrician, having my kids as pediatricians, and I was already practicing in this integrative, holistic way, there are so many things that I still wish I had been told, right?
Yeah.
And so, getting this information out is so important. So thank you for your work.
Yeah, of course. So I would first kind of just love to hear what drew you to more of an integrative lens and more of an integrative practice. And did you find that a difficult path to go down since you were trained at places like Stanford and NYU and UCSF? Did you feel like that was kind of like a different path than what your colleagues were doing?
Very different, especially because back then, I finished my pediatric residency at UCSF in 2000. I mean, that was kind of a long time ago, 24 years ago. And, back then it wasn't even called integrative medicine or holistic medicine. It was called alternative medicine, right? So we've come a long way. And, what drew me to really a more integrative approach, I've always wanted to practice in this way. I didn't always want to be a doctor. I actually thought I was going to be a teacher. I wanted to work with kids. I actually decided at Stanford I was going to be a civil rights lawyer and work, in Washington, D.C. advocating for children's rights. And I went down that path. I mean, I took the LSATs and everything.
Wow.
And then I stumbled upon as a young, how old was I? Maybe 19 years old, 20 years old. This flyer for the conference of the American Holistic Medical Association. And I thought, what is that? I'd always been interested in spirituality and mind-body medicine. And so when I went, my mind was just blown. I heard from people who were just starting to get known, like Andrew Weil and Deepak Chopra and Joan Borisenko. And I thought, okay, this might be a path in medicine that might be appealing, because I had come from a very conventional medicine background. I mean, my mom was an OBGYN, and I mean, nothing I really saw in medicine was that appealing to me. But I thought, if I could do something like this, then it might be really worthwhile, and I could work with children. So that's always informed my path. It wasn't always. I've been blessed to have amazing friends in my pediatric circle who, they definitely thought I was a little out there, and they knew, okay, patients and parents who were wanting a more holistic approach, they knew to send those families to me. But they never judged, and even now, being so much more out there in the world and being more, open to more vulnerable, right? They're just still so supportive, and my family's been so supportive. So I have been really lucky on this path.
That's so great. So do you notice in your own practice that there is a big need for this type of medicine and like a big push for pediatricians to be a little bit more holistic? Because I feel like sometimes it's like by certain groups of people, this type of medicine is kind of like looked at like it's woo-woo, or not real or, all of those types of things. So I'm curious about the types of families that are coming into your office.
It's interesting. I think because I trained here, I did my undergrad at Stanford. I trained at UCSF. So I know a lot of folks here.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of pediatric specialists and primary care pediatricians. So they know me. I mean, they've known me from the beginning. They know I'm not, totally out there. They know I'm really grounded in,
Right.
The evidence and I don't do anything that's I mean, I don't want to judge anything, but it's more, I think, because of that, I've been able to practice in this way and attract families who they want. I guess the way to put it would really be the best of both worlds, because I do practice conventional pediatrics. I write prescriptions when they're absolutely needed. But I also recognize, and many families recognize, that some of those prescriptions don't come without unintended side effects and adverse effects, especially antibiotics or, other medications, even ADHD medications. So they're wanting to know, if my child needs medications, how can I help to support my child? Or is there a way to maybe kind of bolster, build up resilience in my kids, so perhaps they don't even need those medications.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really kind of trying to not throw the baby out with the bathwater, because
Right.
I think when we really take a holistic approach, it can become that way, where we kind of shun everything conventional. And there have been so many benefits with our conventional pediatric world. It's just now we have to recognize, look, we're in a place where we know better, and we need to do better by our kids as pediatricians, and and as parents too. We need to understand, some of those unintended consequences of the conventional pediatric model.
I love that so much, because there does seem to be kind of this divide, right? Where it's like one, I guess, side is vilifying the other. It's like conventional medicine versus more holistic and natural stuff. And there are so many great benefits to both. So I love that. And I love that you also mentioned that you don't always go straight to medications, because I know as a parent, like I could just go to Kaiser here in San Francisco, and we love our pediatricians. They're great. We've gone to some other like smaller practices as well, but it does frustrate me as a parent when I bring in my child for a concern and they're barely looked at before a prescription is kind of thrown our way. And when I question and say, is this really necessary? Do we have to go right to this right away? Is there any other option? I feel like there's like this annoyance from the doctor sometimes, where it's like, oh, just do what I'm telling you, please. Or like, oh, just take it. It's fine. It's safe. I don't know. I guess I just wish that there was a little bit more of a dialogue and a back and forth understanding of like, I'm not against medicine. I'm not against conventional medicine. I am not against medications. I'm not against vaccines. Like, I think that there's a place for all of those things, but I just want to feel informed as a parent too.
And I think what parents want now, it's a very different time than, when I grew up. And I remember my pediatrician, I mean, super nice man. and he was great. I mean, we saw him from the time we were babies all the way. I mean, I remember coming back, from college and having my checkups with him until he finally like booted me out the door. Right. But, it's different. We didn't question anything that the doctor told us. And it was much more of an kind of an authoritarian sort of a relationship. And I will say, even a paternalistic kind of a relationship. It really wasn't a collaborative team approach to healthcare. And now I think as parents, that's what we are seeking, and that's what we should seek. We should seek a partner in health for our children, not someone who is just going to say, well, just do this because I told you so and I'm the doctor.
Right.
And I think most doctors are not that way nowadays. But the problem with the current system is time is really against that collaborative approach. I mean, when you've been I remember being in urgent care, moonlighting, as a resident or even shortly after residency. And I mean, literally, and I think this was actually at Kaiser, I had like a 6-hour shift from 4 o'clock till 10 o'clock at night. I literally didn't get up once to pee or have a bite to eat or even drink a sip of water, because I would see the charts piling up on my desk and I would have maybe 5 minutes to see a patient. I mean, in 5 minutes, even if you want to have that collaborative discussion of, well, maybe we can wait and watch for this antibiotic. Here are the things to look for. Here's when you should start. Oh, and, if you do take the antibiotics, we know what that does to your child's microbiome. Here are the things to support. You can't do that in 5 minutes. So,
No.
I mean, I think it's really a lot to do with the system, and that does have to change, unfortunately, before we can have a truly collaborative, personalized approach to our children's health, which is what we as parents should be asking for, and which is, really what we should be demanding of our healthcare system.
Yeah, absolutely agree. We're going to take one quick break here. And when we come back, I'd love to speak with you about something that I see all the time in my sleep and lactation practice, which is nutritional deficiencies and vitamin deficiencies. We'll be right back. Okay, it's post New Year's. We are out of that holiday season craziness, and I'm really looking forward to getting back into our regular routines, getting back to school. And this is one reason I love Thrive Market. My family and I have been using Thrive for, maybe 6+ years now. We are very loyal subscribers, and it helps us save so much money, but also so much time. We can order right from our app. We know what we want. We can fill our cart super quickly, and we can subscribe to the things we use most. So instead of really sugary snacks, we stock up on things like Simple Mills crackers, Chomps little beef sticks, Lesser Evil popcorn. My kids love the Annie's mac and cheese. We always have that on hand too. So on Thrive Market, you can use all of these different filters from gluten-free to dairy-free to kosher, and you can find all of these better options for your family for, dinner, pantry staples, school lunches, after school snacks, all of that stuff. Anything you're looking for, they have. So the best part is that everything gets shipped directly to your door. So you never have to worry about grocery aisles or, beating the crowds, taking your baby in and out of the car. It just makes it so easy from start to finish. So if you are ready for a junk-free start to 2025, head to thrivemarket.com/HeySleepyBaby and get 30% off your first order plus a $60 gift free. That's Thrive, THRIVE market.com/HeySleepyBaby. thrivemarket.com/HeySleepyBaby.
Are you a parent in need of a laugh and a little escape? Look no further. Parenting is a Joke is the podcast you've been waiting for. Hey, I'm Ophira Eisenberg. I'm a stand-up comic and parent. And each week I chat with one of my top comedian pals who, just like you, are juggling careers, busy lives and schedules, and raising a family. You can expect candid stories, hilarious mishaps that happen on stage and at home, and just a lot of laughs. There's no expert advice here. Well, actually, sometimes a good idea does sneak its way in, but mostly just pure, relatable fun to remind you that we're all in this parenting adventure together. New episodes of Parenting is a Joke drop every Tuesday, so tune in, get ready to laugh, unwind, and maybe even feel a little bit better about your own parenting. Because sometimes that's exactly what your therapist, pediatrician, and bartender ordered. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast platform.
So one thing as a sleep specialist, and, we see parents all the time who are having really acute sleep problems, sometimes feeding problems going along with those. We always refer out and have them get work that's necessary to be done. But one thing that we do notice all the time is that lots of these babies and toddlers who are struggling with things like sleep or, behavior or all kinds of things, one thing that it often comes down to is a deficiency of some sort. So I would love for you to give us your perspective on some of the most common deficiencies that we see in little kids and babies, like iron or vitamin D, and how those can actually affect sleep.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is, when we're thinking about a baby, and you're seeing, of course, newborns and, for nursing support, and also, of course, along with that, oftentimes comes sleep support.
Mm-hmm.
And so what's fascinating now is we know so much about how an infant's developing gut microbiome can impact their sleep, their temperament, their moods, and their behaviors. And that starts, from the moment they're born and really kind of lays the foundation for what may happen in your toddler years or when your kids are school age or teenagers. And one thing that correlates with that really, quote, fussy phase or the colicky phase is an abnormal balance of bacteria or microbes in your child's gut microbiome. And that can also go along with, we can see certain signatures of microbiome patterns in your baby that can predict, maybe, this baby's microbiome pattern is not the most conducive to restorative, sleep. And so one of the things that I will look at for babies who really are having trouble sleeping in those early stages or even, in the later stages in life, but in those early stages is really how much of the beneficial bacteria do they have in their gut microbiome. This is really important. There is a class, a kind of a general species of bacteria, beneficial bacteria called bifidobacteria, which many people are familiar with. And that's so important to lay the foundation for healthy sleep, healthy immune development, healthy brain development. And we know that over the past century or so, our babies, even our breastfed babies, are slowly losing the percentage of bifidobacteria in their gut microbiomes. And babies in reality should have maybe 80% of their microbiome made up of bifidobacteria species. Now, breast milk is uniquely designed to feed the bifidobacteria. There's all these amazing prebiotic substances called human milk oligosaccharides. And so that feeds specifically that bifidobacteria. And we have that healthy bifidobacteria. It trains your baby's immune system to build tolerance, have lower risk for food allergies and eczema and asthma and, even hay fever later on in life. So that's one of the first things I look at. So now, is that a nutritional deficiency? Not necessarily, but it is a deficiency, this loss of bifidobacteria. And so if we can really optimize that. Now, of course, breast milk, again, those HMOs that are really chock full of in breast milk, that's one of the best ways to support that bifidobacteria. For moms who are, only able to maybe partially nurse or for whatever reason unable to, fully establish breastfeeding, there are human milk oligosaccharide products like, there's a 2FL product on the market now that can be a helpful addition. Even for breastfed babies, sometimes it is. And of course, there are infant probiotics that have the bifidobacteria. So I'd say if you have a fussy baby, a baby who's really not sleeping through the night, who seems to have, the tummy issues are curling, scrunched up when they're trying to poop, or they're screaming and arching their backs, and maybe having a little spit up or a lot of spit up, looking at their microbiome and supporting that can be very, very helpful. Now, when we think about, though, the sleep, let's think about sleep because that's like our number one. Like, we want our kids and our babies to sleep. Especially as kids get older, what I look at is, what are some of the nutrients that can impact sleep? And one of the most important is magnesium. We know that magnesium is a very, very common nutrient deficiency in both children and adults. And, for my kiddos in the practice, oftentimes when I have the opportunity, I will check lab work, and this is mostly blood work. But not every family has a pediatrician who's able to who may be willing to order lab work. And then again, thinking about doing blood work in kids, it's not a small deal.
No, it's not fun.
No, we have to be prepared for that. And we can make it very smooth. And I encourage you, to, think about how to, we can talk about that as well. But magnesium, what are some of the signs that your baby, your child, your teenager might need more magnesium? Well, having trouble sleeping, right? Falling asleep or staying asleep, that is a very, very common symptom. Having constipation, so hard stools. That's definitely, to me, screaming out, okay, this baby probably or child needs more magnesium. Headaches is also can be a feature for magnesium deficiencies. Magnesium is responsible for relaxing our muscles. So any muscle cramps, your teenage athletes who really cramp up while they're playing sports or after sports, If you wake up with muscle cramps, I mean, we know, for a lot of moms while you're pregnant, you'll have those cramps. I mean, think about magnesium and potassium, right?
Yeah.
But magnesium also, anxiety, right? Magnesium is a very calming mineral. So anyone who's having trouble with managing stress, quieting their mind for bed, quieting their mind before heading to school. We're now, as we're interviewing right now, it's back to school time, and a lot of kids have back to school jitters and worries, no matter what age they are and how long they've been in school. And so sometimes just giving a little extra magnesium during this time can be really, really supportive. Another time that I think of magnesium and really helping our kids out is if they have any problems with wheezing. If they tend to wheeze or have lung muscle spasms. Remember, magnesium relaxes muscles. So the muscles around your lungs, your small lung spaces, the bronchioles that spasm when you have a cold and cause wheezing or when you have allergies, that can be really, really reduced by having enough magnesium on board. When we think about our older kids, our teenagers, anyone with period cramps, magnesium can be really helpful. Or, as a mom, once you get your period back after your baby's born, and you're like, oh my gosh, I forgot about those cramps, then magnesium can be really helpful. So, and, you don't have to write furiously down, guys. In the book, in one of the last chapters, I put down a list of these clinical clues, these symptoms that can appear if your child may need more of these particular nutrients. So as you go through the list of magnesium, if you're like, check, oh my gosh, my child is all of these, or I have all of these, then that's a sign. Hey, let's either focus on, hopefully, getting in more magnesium-rich foods, and if needed, maybe try a supplement.
And one thing that has been going really viral on TikTok recently, and maybe it's just my algorithm is showing me this stuff, but to me it feels like every other video I see is about this magnesium lotion or magnesium sprays. And I get clients asking me about this stuff all the time, and I'm not really sure what to say because I'm not a doctor. And I am always very hesitant to recommend supplements because that's just outside of my scope. But I would love to hear what you think about things like topical magnesium, particularly for really little ones like babies and toddlers. Is there a risk? Is there a benefit?
Yeah. I think, of course, your skin as one of our largest and most absorptive organs, anything you put on your skin will get absorbed through your skin. So we want to always be mindful of what we're putting on our skin, especially our baby skin, and using clean products that don't have, parabens and that, ideally aren't going to be loaded with, artificial scents and all of those endocrine, hormone disruptors that are ever present, unfortunately, in American sold skincare and cosmetic products. So you want to look for more clean products. But then, magnesium spray, magnesium oil, those can be helpful. I have to say, I haven't measured magnesium levels in the blood before and after to see is that enough. And not even, there are vitamin patches. I have to say, that I'm not sure how effective those are in terms of raising your blood magnesium levels. But I think they can be helpful.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any wows with them. I don't know. With babies, I always start, really low, small amounts, and go up slowly. And when we think about the sprays and the magnesium oils, they're not like massage oils that we're thinking of. They don't go on smoothly on the skin. They typically use magnesium chloride, which is a magnesium salt, and they're kind of sticky. So I've had kids, use magnesium spray or put magnesium oil on at nighttime, especially if they're not, if they are a little bit more on the, picky side and don't necessarily like taking the magnesium supplement. We've used some of the magnesium topicals, but they're not something that, as you lay down and snuggle with your kid, you can massage on their back and just rub their back to sleep. It's just to apply a little bit and kind of leave on, at least the ones that I've tried.
Okay.
Another way to really boost your magnesium levels, though, is with an Epsom salt bath. And
I was just going to ask about that. Yeah, I do that with my kids all the time.
Yeah, I love Epsom salts. And Epsom salts are magnesium sulfate, so they actually have multiple benefits for our kids. The magnesium is going to get absorbed. I've had kids, who take a nice warm Epsom salt bath and, have histories of constipation, and they're able to poop right after. Now, that's also you're relaxed, everything, just kind of calms down in the bath, but the magnesium also really helps too. And then the sulfate in the magnesium sulfate salts will enhance the production of something called glutathione in our bodies. And glutathione is what's considered our master antioxidant, helps with supporting detoxification and immune support, getting over viral respiratory infections. And so there's a lot of benefit for magnesium. When kids are wheezing, one thing I'll do is have parents just immediately draw an Epsom salt bath, put them in, because the magnesium and the glutathione just helps calm the lungs and can help really reduce that wheezing episode.
That's really interesting. And so when you say wheezing, does that mean like kids who are asthmatic, or if they're sick, or just if they're wheezing because of an unknown reason, or all the above?
All of the above. All of the above. Because the mechanism for wheezing is that spasm in your lung muscles. So whether it's triggered by, hay fever, like an allergy to dust mites or pollen, or if it's triggered by, exercise or a cold, or maybe they've been diagnosed with asthma and, that a cold always triggers it. So they're starting to get a sniffle. And you'd hopefully like to prevent them from going down a big path of, needing a ton of inhalers and medical treatments during that cold. You can start Epsom salt baths right away, even at the beginning of the cold. Now, I would still use their rescue inhaler, as directed if they need it. It's not a replacement, but it can help to reduce the severity, or just in that moment if they're really wheezy and you're setting up your nebulizer machine. Well, go ahead and draw the bath and then do the nebulizer, while they're in the bath, and just kind of letting everything help calm their muscles down in their lungs.
Okay, that's really interesting. What about iron? Because this is another one that we see a lot of, particularly with babies and toddlers, specifically ferritin. So what can you tell us about iron and the impact of iron and ferritin on everything, but maybe particularly sleep too?
Yeah. Well, iron is so important for babies' brain development, and it is one of the more widely recognized nutrient deficiencies in children, especially, right around 9 months of age. Many babies will have, if you go to your pediatrician's office, may have their little finger prick or a little toe prick to check hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is a measure of, anemia. And there are various reasons, but the most common is going to be iron deficiency anemia. You can also have anemia from B12 deficiency. But in infants, when we look at low hemoglobins, it's usually because they're not getting enough iron. And what happens, at that point, iron stores start to become more and more depleted, and babies reach a low point of their iron stores and also zinc stores right around 9 months of age. And so then we want to make sure that they're getting in enough food sources of iron, and sometimes even need an iron supplement. That's actually why now it's very different from when I was first in training in pediatrics. The recommendations for first foods includes animal proteins because they are richer in iron and zinc. So we don't wait to start those until 9 or 10 months, which is what I learned in training. We can start those right away as some of the first foods. And so when we look at iron in our body and how sufficient your child is, we look at hemoglobin, but also ferritin. And ferritin is a marker for your stores of iron. So what is your iron reserve? And you can have a situation where you have low iron stores, but have totally normal hemoglobin. So you're not technically anemic, right?
And we see this a lot. This is why a lot of times, clients will come back to us and say, oh, my doctor said that the iron's fine because their hemoglobin was normal.
That's right.
And they're not doing the full panel. Yeah.
Yeah. And that can be the case for moms, right? It's often the case for teenagers, especially teenage girls, where I see, they're not technically anemic, but their ferritin is either at the bottom of the normal range or they're just outright low. Right. Now, when we think about, ferritin, and iron, what do we need that for? So again, I mentioned brain development. So if your kiddos, are having any issues with, having trouble staying focused or paying attention, or even dealing with their moods, or having trouble with sleep, when you have low ferritin, that absolutely can affect your sleep. Sometimes it's also poor endurance. It may be outright low energy, but a lot of parents will say, well, my kids have a lot of energy. But when you really kind of dive into that and explore that a little further, yes, they have a lot of energy to run around for maybe, half an hour at the park, but then they have to come home and they crash a little bit and they need to regroup. And then, they can go out and run around. So there's these energies like ups and downs, really, these peaks and these valleys, as opposed to a sustained level of energy. Sometimes you will notice your kids, the whites of their eyes look a little bit whiter, a little more pale. Inside of the cheek might look a little bit more pale, not kind of a nice rosy pink that we would expect to see. Sometimes skin is outright pale. My niece, one time I looked at her and I was like, oh my gosh, she had fair skin anyway, but she just looked so fair, and you could see she didn't really have dark circles under her eyes, but they were so pronounced because of the difference between her skin. And she wasn't anemic, but she had low ferritin levels. Now, there is, when we think about blood levels, we also want to think about not just is it in the normal range, but is it in the optimal range?
Yeah.
And this is what we think about from an integrative pediatric standpoint, from a functional medicine standpoint, because we know there's a wide range for normal. I don't know if I just want to be, quote, normal, right? I want to be optimal. I want my kids to be thriving at like the highest end, right? Not just kind of barely skirting by, right?
Exactly.
And so so typically, when we look at ferritin levels, it does vary by age and it can vary by gender, but we think about the typical range for kids, let's say at Quest Labs, if you go to Quest Labs, will be maybe between a 20 and an 80. For optimal brain functioning, sleep, energy and endurance, mood, I like to have the ferritin at least at 40. So 40 to 60 is more the optimal range. So looking at that, if your kids are, at a 21, that's not going to be optimal for where we want them to be. And so then, focusing on those iron-rich foods. Iron in foods, it's interesting, I get questions about, well, can you be a vegetarian and still get enough iron? And yes, but you have to be more mindful about it. You have to be more thoughtful about it. The heme iron found in animal proteins is more easily absorbed by our intestines. Now, what's fascinating is the lower our iron stores go, the more easily the non-heme iron from vegetarian sources actually is absorbed. So it's kind of, we get a little bit more that way. Iron is going to be much more easily absorbed also when it's taken concurrently with vitamin C. So if you're having a hamburger, for the iron in the beef, well, make sure you load that hamburger up with tomatoes and maybe some kale or spinach, or you have a side of broccoli so that you have the vitamin C paired with the iron.
Yeah.
So there are, some ways that we can get booster iron levels even without supplementation. And another trick is if you're using cast iron skillets or pans, and cooking in that will help to infuse whatever you're cooking with a little bit more iron, from the cast iron skillet, which is also another, it's definitely a healthier kind of a cookware pan to use than the nonstick pans, which we want to not use because of all the PFAS and the forever chemicals in there.
Yeah, exactly. And is it true also, I think I heard that calcium can inhibit the absorption of iron. Is that true? So
Yeah, so there are certain, some minerals you don't want to take together necessarily. It's mostly iron and zinc are the ones that are really going to kind of compete.
Oh, okay.
And then calcium, typically calcium is, it's harder to absorb anyway, and it's a big mineral.
Okay.
And so, typically, I'll take calcium on its own. Or you can take calcium with magnesium.
Okay. We're having some concerns with my toddler, and we ended up getting her blood done, and her ferritin came back at a 23. So we were told, oh yeah, everything looks good. It's normal. And I was like, I don't know. I would really love to supplement her. And luckily they were like, okay, they weren't going to fight me. So they said, it's fine to do supplements. And I was kind of sharing about this on Instagram, and I have a lot of international followers, and some came back and said, oh, that's just normal here. We just supplement with iron for all babies. So can you talk a little bit more about how, because I know like here it's recommended that all babies get vitamin D, for example, but that's kind of it. Can you tell us a little bit about why we're giving certain ones and not others, or how that's decided?
It's interesting. I think it's really just different guidelines and, here in the States, expecting that there's going to be more like better nutrition than in some developing countries where there may be very common just to give iron drops and vitamin D drops or other mineral drops and vitamin drops. Iron is one though. It is, it can, most of the other vitamins and minerals, like your let's say if you're supplementing with vitamin B12, it's a water-soluble vitamin, so you kind of pee out all the extra. So there's very, very low risk of getting to a toxic level. Iron can have some toxicity associated with it, which is why, I remember as a kid, those iron pills used to be super yummy, right? And there weren't child-proof prescription bottles, right? You can easily open. And so, in the ERs, we would sometimes see kids who kind of, dump the whole container of yummy iron, right? Or like the Bayer's Johnson baby aspirin, just dumping. I remember, thinking those were candy because they were so sweet, right? And so, now we know to just to be a little bit more cautious. But, I think a little bit of iron supplementation, especially if your kids have any symptoms of iron deficiency, is going. And I've had babies do this and measure their levels, and it would be challenging to get to toxic levels if you follow the dosage instructions for the average infant or the child. Now, also, you just want to know that some of the over-the-counter iron drops, especially the ones that maybe recommended by conventional pediatricians. Unfortunately, some of those have artificial flavors and artificial sweeteners in them, or preservatives that really aren't going to be beneficial for your child's developing microbiomes and their immune systems and even their nervous systems. So getting a clean iron supplement that doesn't have saccharin or sucralose or polysorbate 80. Some of them I've even seen have some like propylparabens in them as preservatives. So just read the labels. I mean, that bottom line, whatever you put in or on your baby,
right.
Read the label, right?
Yeah, and always best to start with foods first if you can, right? That's why I love your book. You give so many great recommendations for foods for all of these different types of things too, which I love. We're going to take one more quick break, and when we come back, we are going to talk a little bit more about the gut microbiome. We'll be right back.
Are you overwhelmed by the things that get in the way of you doing what you want to do? Are you looking for ways to simplify life to better align with your values? Do you want to create space in your schedule so you have room for more of the good stuff? Play, joy, relationships, gratitude, and more? If you answered yes to any of these questions, I invite you to check out Edit Your Life, a podcast to help you edit the unnecessary from your life so you have more room to enjoy the awesome. Through episodes with me, Christine Coe, and a range of super smart, compassionate, and thoughtful guests, you'll come away with big picture insights and practical ways to declutter your home, schedule, and mental space without getting bogged down by perfection. I have always believed that small moments and actions matter tremendously. My goal is to help you find agency and space in your life through doable baby steps that will leave you feeling accomplished instead of overwhelmed. Check out Edit Your Life wherever you enjoy your podcasts.
When it comes to raising kids, there's so much to consider. Things like, what do we feed them? When do we feed them? How do they sleep? What does it look like to raise kind kids? How does their nervous system work? How do I keep myself calm? What are my triggers? There's so much that comes into play, and we are distilling all of that information for you at Voices of Your Village podcast, where we bring experts in the field of early childhood and education and psychology and across the board so that you don't have to comb the internet for information. You get to show up and hang out and have shame-free, judgment-free conversations and insights into what it looks like to raise kind, empathetic, emotionally intelligent humans. I'm Alyssa Blask Campbell. I have a master's degree in early childhood education. I'm a mom of 2, and I am walking this journey right alongside you doing this work. Come hang out with me at Voices of Your Village, and we can dive into real conversations with actionable tips.
We have been talking all about nutrients and deficiencies and things like that. And at the beginning of the episode, you also mentioned the gut microbiome and how certain things like antibiotics, can kind of harm our microbiome, especially when we're so young. What are some things that parents can do to either prepare for a round of antibiotics or recover from a round of antibiotics? And what are some things to keep in mind for just nourishing our child's gut microbiome?
Yeah. So this is a really important issue. In fact, I have a whole chapter in the book devoted to what every parent and practitioner should know about antibiotics. And, the concerns really are on multiple levels. From a public health concern, we know that the overuse of antibiotics is really, creating a massive rise in antibiotic-resistant bacteria. And by 2050, the World Health Organization and several experts are concerned that antibiotic resistance will become a leading cause of death worldwide. So that is really frightening. I mean, we need to take antibiotic stewardship and, really the appropriate use of antibiotics very, very seriously from a global standpoint. This is, antibiotics were one of the most important discoveries of the 20th century. So we can't let ourselves go back to a time where, even simple infections, there was nothing that we could do and could become deadly. So that's one issue. And then on an individual level, we know antibiotics are not they're not picky in who they kill, right? Mm-hmm. And so we know that there are pathogenic bacteria that may be causing infections, like let's say a bacterial pneumonia. And so we want the antibiotics to kill those bad bacteria, but at the same time, they can kill along with it all of the beneficial bacteria that make up our microbiomes. And I say microbiomes because we have microbiomes, these ecosystems of trillions of tiny microscopic organisms all over us, in and on us. Our skin has its own microbiome. As women, our vaginas have our own microbiome. Our breast milk glands have our own microbiome. And the most well-studied microbiome is our gut microbiome. So most of the times when you're looking at studies or seeing, articles, on your news feed, you'll see discussion about the microbiome is referring to your gut microbiome. Now, for babies, there's all sorts of factors that go into how your baby's microbiome shapes in those early days, including were they vaginally birthed or born by C-section? Did you as mama, receive antibiotics either during pregnancy, maybe for a UTI or a sinus infection, or did you have group B strep, positivity during this particular birth and received antibiotics? What is the health of your vaginal and gut microbiome, during the delivery and even during pregnancy? And how is the baby fed initially? Breast, formula, or both, right? And all of those can shape how your baby's microbiome develops. And we know that influence of how your baby's microbiome develops can then shape how their immune system develops. Do they have risks later on for increasingly common, eczema and asthma or, hay fever, even anaphylactic food allergies on the rise now, way more common than when I was in training, can really also be linked to, how healthy is your baby's gut microbiome from the start. And the gut brain connection. We know how healthy your child's microbiome is in those early stages can influence later on, their potential risks for ADHD or anxiety, or we mentioned sleep problems. Now, with antibiotics, it's a particular I guess we would call concern for infants. There are some large studies, and I'm going to take a moment here because, this is where a lot of moms will look back and think, oh my gosh, but I didn't know, right? Just like your podcast, like no one told us.
Yeah.
And we can't go back in time and change what's happened in the past. But what we can do is now know, okay, maybe that is what laid the foundations for, my toddler who is now having tons of sensory and behavioral concerns, or my teenager who's really struggling with anxiety, or, my middle child who has really bad eczema and asthma. So some really, this one study, nearly 800,000 children found that antibiotics or antacid medications, because antacid medications also disrupt the gut microbiome.
Oh, so like reflux meds?
Reflux meds.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Like, Zantac no longer given, but any of the reflux meds that are given now to infants.
Yeah.
So antacids, antibiotics given in the first 6 months of life could significantly increase the risk of your baby developing virtually any allergic disorder by the time they're 4 years of age, sometimes double the risk.
Wow.
Right. Another study, this is out of Denmark, looked at, it was a huge study of mother-infant pairs, and also found that antibiotics to the baby at any stage, but especially if there was antibiotic exposure before 6 months of age, including in utero, like when you were pregnant with your baby, could significantly increase the risk for, many mental health concerns by the time they were older kids or teenagers. Now, both of my kiddos, had antibiotics when they're less than 5 weeks of age. Now, I did have I was lucky enough at that time to understand the disruption to their gut microbiome. What are some of the consequences that could occur? I didn't know all of it, though. I didn't know what I know now, right? There are a lot of things even I go back and wish I had known. But even if, that is your child and they're struggling with issues now, at least now okay, let's look at the gut microbiome, right? Because if your child has eczema or asthma or struggling with anxiety, social anxieties or separation anxieties, chances are in a conventional pediatric visit, your doctor is probably not going to mention, we should look at their gut microbiome and see how to restore their microbiome to kind of right the path, And so, but now okay, let's look at the gut microbiome. Let's see how can I, even if I don't have a functional doc to do all of this testing and guide me through, what are the things I can do to help really nourish and restore my child's gut microbiome even from now, because absolutely we can restore your baby or your child's or your teenager's microbiome no matter what stage they're at. It might take a little longer, but we can do it. And the knowing to look there is the first part.
Yeah, so it's not too late. I love that because, we all have that mom guilt of like, I had group B strep and I couldn't help it. And yeah, it's so tough. Yeah, I love how you weave that throughout the book, is how important the microbiome is in our kids' guts.
Yeah.
I would love for everyone to grab your book, and I'm sure everyone listening is like, I wish she was my pediatrician. So I will link all of that in the show notes. But my last question for you is actually not as a doctor, it's as a mom. And I'd love to know, because you have teenagers, so you're a few steps ahead of many of us. What's something that no one told you that you wish you knew before becoming a parent?
I think the biggest thing, the most important thing that I wish I had learned, and I actually was just talking to my kids about this this weekend. It's funny. I was blessed to have the most amazing pediatric attending at UCSF, who became my daughter's first pediatrician. And then we moved down to the peninsula, and her what we call anticipatory guidance, like helping parents anticipate the next stages, was so beautiful. I mean, she was so gifted in that way. And so I guess there are two things that I wish someone had reminded me, because I knew those, but they haven't been as present as I would have hoped. Now, the first would be, as we were first about to have Kenzie, right, kind of deliver into this world, I wish that I had remembered to take a moment, a day or, an afternoon with my husband to write out all the things that we were going to miss about not having a baby in our lives. Right? And that's nothing to do with not wanting the baby or saying that you have regrets or, I wish I had that life again. It's just saying, look, I know we are going to miss not being able to just on a whim, take off for the weekend because we used to do that a lot, right? Or, I know I'm going to miss, whatever it is, being able to eat dinner, like go out to the fanciest restaurant we want to whenever we want to, right?
Yes.
So you just write that and you just say, okay, yes, we will get back to that at some point. But these are the things I acknowledge. That there are things that are not going to be part of our lives for a while, and we are going to embrace all the new things, but they're going to be different.
Yeah.
Right? So that's one thing. Now, the second thing that I'm constantly reminding myself, and I wish I had remembered as they were younger, is to think about reverse engineering the adult that you want your child to become. Right. It's not just, modeling that, because we all know and we want to show them, the good, the bad, the ugly. Right. We have to show them that we are real and that we overcome some of the challenges that we go through. But thinking about, okay, if you want your child to be independent thinkers and, respectful and kind and also, respecting themselves, what are the things that really they need to start learning even as toddlers? And how do we impart that? How do we reverse engineer that? It's not about helping them all the time and fixing everything, right? It's not about, always making sure that they're happy. And so, I wish I had those more frequent reminders along the way, as we have teenagers and I think back, should I not have done that for them when they were little? But yeah.
Oh, that's such good advice. Thank you so much. Where can everybody connect with you and find your book and all of that stuff?
Yeah. So the best place to find me and just, get more information and, I love to post educational content. I'm a busy mom like all of you listeners, so I never post fluff. I don't actually send out too many newsletters or write, Instagram posts that often. But when I do, I really try to pack it in with information so that it is worth, you are giving me the honor of spending, 5-10 minutes with my content. I want to make it worth your time.
I love that.
And so, that's on Instagram is where I'm most active. So that's healthykids_happykids. My website where you can get my newsletter is healthykidshappykids.com. And my book, you can go to my book website, but it's available anywhere, pretty much anywhere books are sold. So Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, Target. I've been popping into kind of small local indie bookstores when I'm traveling, and a lot of them have at least one copy, maybe two. So supporting your small bookstores. In fact, in San Francisco, is it right near Dolores Park? There's a bookstore that one of my families was walking through and then said, "Hey, look, here's your book." So I love that. Yeah, I'd love it.
It's a great book. It's definitely something that all parents should have on hand. So I highly recommend it. And I'll put all of that in the show notes as well so people can easily find it. Thank you so, so much, Elisa. It was so fun to chat with you, and you're just such a wealth of knowledge, and it's so refreshing to hear all of the stuff that you share for families. So I really appreciate you.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on.
Hey friends, if you're facing divorce, thinking about it, or navigating the chaos it can bring, I've got something just for you. I'm Kate Anthony, and I host the New York Times recommended The Divorce Survival Guide podcast, your one-stop resource for surviving and thriving through divorce. Each week, we dive into everything from emotional healing and co-parenting to legal strategies and starting over. You'll hear from top experts, powerful guest stories, and maybe a little tough love along the way. Because divorce, it's hard, but you don't have to do it alone. This isn't just about getting through it. It's about rebuilding and reclaiming your life on the other side. Whether you're in the middle of a messy split or planning your next chapter, I've got your back. So hit that follow button and join me on the Divorce Survival Guide podcast, because survival isn't the end, it's just the beginning.